Good morning. It's very good to be here. I understand this is a workshop type format, so let me just say every once in a while I'll pause. If you have questions, I'll be glad to address those questions as we progress. And I'm going to try to work our way through the topics this morning. I understand that some of you are actually purchase staff that does electronic bidding in compliance with Title 38. Others are trying to get their feet wet, so to speak, in this area, and I'm here to help. A little more about my background. I'm here to serve as a purchasing consultant to any local political subdivisions under contract with the Louisiana Municipal Association. And as mentioned before, they're the sole recognized, it's a quasi-public entity that's recognized by the legislature that all Louisiana municipals and municipalities automatically belong to, and we're also affiliated with the all parks and recreation districts, and also with all the city clerks. We do a lot of purchasing at the municipal level, and we're also associated with the City Attorneys Association, who provide, at least at our level, the advice when it comes to purchasing matters. So what we're going to get started with first, and I'm just bringing it down to the basic level to remind everybody what the basic requirements are under our law. And of course, from what I understand, most school districts fall under Title 38. And that's the same area that all of our local governments participate in, unless they've elected to adopt all or part of Title 39, which is what most state agencies use at the state level. So just to briefly sum it up, under Title 38, and we're particularly dealing with Section 2212.1, and it provides the different purchase categories and what you have to do. Of course, if it's under $10,000, the code is silent as to what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to follow your own policy. You're supposed to follow what the legislative auditor recommends as best practices, and those are called small purchases at the local level. If a purchase, of course, is over $10,000, but it's less than $30,000, the law provides that you have to obtain 3 quotes. And very recently, the law was changed. Prior to the change, it required you to get telephone quotes or facsimile quotes. Now the law provides that you can also get email quotes, and you can also get any type of electronic quotes that you can download. So what they're talking about there actually is a RFQ type platform that you can use when it comes to the quote process. And of course, that's up to $30,000. Now, when we're talking about purchases over $30,000, and we're talking about electronic bids, that means we're talking sealed bids, and we're also talking about electronic reverse auctions, which are totally electronic. There's no paper involved in that particular type of bid situation. Anyway, the Title 38 2212.1 requires an agency to provide vendors the opportunity to submit their bids electronically. That's pretty vague, but the law goes on to say that contractors shall be provided the option to submit bids for public contracts through a uniform and secure electronic interactive system. Okay. There's a few exemptions under the law, such if you don't have access to high-speed internet, but I believe just about anybody these days has access to high-speed internet. And also municipalities that are under 10,000 in size are exempt. Electronic bidding through a sealed bid process is voluntary or optional if you're operating under an exemption. I don't know of any exemptions for schools or school districts and that sort of thing. Is anybody aware of any kind of exemption from electronic bidding? The other available method, it's not widely used, but I promote it as part of the work that I do, is the misnomer. I don't know where that term came from. It's only mentioned once in the statute. Title 38, 2271 for local government defines what that process is. It calls it a competitive online solicitation process on the internet for equipment, supplies, and other materials which vendors compete against each other online in real time in an open and interactive environment. A lot of people say, oh, well, that's like eBay or something like that. Well, it's not quite the same as an eBay sort of situation. Typically, in a reverse auction situation, the pre-qualified bidders that are registered are actually going to be given the opportunity during the course of bidding, whether it's open for 30 minutes for bidding, whether it's open for 2 weeks for bidding, they are given the opportunity to actually lower their bids online and try to outrank going down in price the other bidders that are involved. And of course, in that kind of process, they can actually tell what rank they are. They don't necessarily know who the other bidders are, except that they've qualified for the products that are being looked at or being purchased. And it's a very dynamic process that that allows vendors a second, third, and even a fourth opportunity to get a contract, which they couldn't have gotten if they had just simply submitted one sealed bid and it didn't turn out to be the low bid. All right, so what exactly qualifies as a uniform and secure interactive electronic system for the purposes of sealed bids? And that's a big question. The term, none of these terms are defined, by the way, except there are some provisions talking about the security requirements that are typically put out at the state level through the Office of Technology Services. But the uniform process typically means that all the bids submitted must be the same for each bidder that's participating. You can't make up different rules for different individuals. The system has to be secure. When we're talking sealed bids, that means that the agency can't seal open the bids until the bid deadline comes along. Just like when they're mailed in and they come in an envelope, they have to remain basically out of your view, out of touch until the actual deadline. And there's all kinds of policies behind that, but that's just how it's worked forever when it comes to sealed bids. So a platform has to have that kind of security built into it. Also, security means that the bidders can only submit, retrieve, or cancel their bids in accordance with Title 38, 2212.1. That has various rules about withdrawing bids and when you can do it, when it's too late, and what the consequences are for that. And the platform has to be auditable. That means it has to leave an electronic trail so that later somebody from the Legislative Auditor's Office or your internal auditors or whoever it might be can go back and see what occurred during the bid process. Notice bidders who were registered, bids that were submitted, what time were they submitted, were they transmitted correctly to the buyer so that they can be opened publicly and read. And also there's a requirement that the systems be interactive. And at least to me, that means that the agency must be able to post all information, the requirements, and the specifications onto the platform. All the information and requirements have to be accessible by the bidders on the platform itself. And all bid and bid documents required can be submitted, meaning uploaded into the system for the submission of the bids that are involved. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm with Jefferson Parish Purchasing Department, and we've been doing the online bidding since it was instituted back in 2008. My question is, do you foresee, or is there a way that you can mandate only electronic bidding? Right now we do both, and it gets to be very
Right. The goal,
detailed.
let me just tell you what the goal is for the state is to move entirely to electronic bidding. Other states have done that. And they've done it successfully. We're taking a slow approach, but in fact, I'm going to get to it in just a minute. There is a provision that allows you to opt in just for electronic bidding only. When it comes to a sealed bid, of course, if you're conducting a reverse auction, an interactive bid, then that means that it's electronic anyway. It covers that
Most of
base.
our supply bids, they're fine with doing it online, but the public work projects, they want to be there for the public bid opening, and they don't want to submit it through online. So
Right.
I'm just wondering, because that makes us have to do two different processes.
It does, and there's various ways to address that. I believe over time, they're going to get familiarized with the bid submission process. Plenty of contractors these days actually have an outside consultant that they utilize, a non-staff member to submit all their bids. So I think it's going to catch on. But the beautiful thing still about electronic bidding is that you can require that all of the documents that they're going to obtain be acquired, on the electronic platform through a link to be downloaded, so you don't have troops of contractors trucking down to your administration building asking for handouts and so on and so forth.
Right. We publish everything on our online site and then on the pack as well, over $30,000, but it's the submission back to us that I was talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm one of the ones that has to go check so far as the USDA regulations being met. And there are a lot of times when all the state regulations are met, they're met perfectly, no problems. But then when I have to answer questions like, are there restrictions to competition? Are you specifying a brand? And that, in USDA eyes, from what we've been told, what we're supposed to look for, those restrict competition, and that generates a finding for the school food authority.
Sure. You can comply with Louisiana law, but you may not be complying with the federal agency or other agency that's actually paying the money and controls the process. So you have to comply with both. And in the field of electronic bidding, when you're dealing with standardized templates, solicitation templates, all you have to do is download into these systems, for the most part, the other regulations that have to be followed. And then you can also create what's called a task list, where they just, online, they go through and they check off each requirement and confirm that they are complying with those particular requirements.
Yeah, because, that's what we've seen a lot of times, and then the local supervisor over child nutrition, they get stuck in the middle between their procurement people who are well versed with state, and here we're coming in and saying, no, USDA does not let you do that. So I'm glad that there are some district level procurement people in the audience where they can be aware of some of these things. And quite frankly, a lot of times they think, well, it doesn't matter, but it does matter to that child nutrition program.
It's very important. We see that if anybody operates with disaster-type contracts, disaster relief, and FEMA, at the same time, you have to follow those. You have to follow Louisiana law, and you also have to follow the federal requirements when it comes to those types of contracts. Just quickly,
Can I ask one question, real quick?
sure.
Just so I can get a clear understanding on what we've discussed so far, is that what we're doing and have been doing for a few years, if we have been posting and placing our bids in PDF format right now, because I don't have them on a electronic thing, but I'm posting them on a bid thing, for example, and that way, and then the vendor can come back and post it on there and submit it that way. But is that still within meeting state regulations?
Well, I'm not sure, but we will, I don't know everything about business operations, but I know they've been in business for a while. They must be doing something right. But what I will do is let's go over what does not qualify first, okay? For receipt of bids by email, That's not electronic bidding or electronic submission. It's not a secure system. Anybody at the other end of that email address can open up what's being submitted there. Although some things can be required or asked for through email, such as, can you provide, after bids are open, provide a file, that summarizes this, that, or the other thing. It's not part of the bid itself. That could be authorized. But, email bids are not. That is not electronic bidding. Merely posting solicitations on what amounts to a bulletin board or on an online searchable database is not electronic bidding. I've talked to different agencies and different personnel who misunderstand. They say, well, we post it out there on these posting sites. Okay, well, how do they submit the bids electronically? Well, they don't. Everybody walks them in, delivers them, and mails them in. That's not electronic bidding. Receiving bids through a system where the agency has no access to what is going on also presents a problem, presents a security problem. I talked to an agency not too long ago. They were doing, it was the Parks and Recreation Department in the New Orleans area. And they said, well, we take our bids down to these printers, and they have a very cool system. They'll post the stuff there, and people can get into their system and look at this stuff, and then send them our bid, and then they'll come and deliver it to us as a summary. And I dare say that's not a secure electronic interactive bidding system. Does that answer any of your questions about
Well,
what
that sounds
you're
like I'm
doing?
not doing it right.
Okay, well, let's go on and see if we're doing it right or not. So, I might just skip ahead real quick. Well, we'll get to it in a minute, and it may answer that question if I can go ahead and go forward. Somebody did say they had questions.
I had a question about a very basic question, which is, we're very new. We don't even have this platform that you're talking about. So how do I get into that?
Okay, and I'm going to get to that real soon too as I progress. And if I don't get that far, then you and I will talk.
Thank you.
Okay. I mentioned briefly what we call a reverse auction. Again, that's a misnomer. What we're really talking about is live, online, interactive bidding, where the bidders pre-qualify, and they're bidding against each other. They're submitting bids. It's not an auction in the sense that you have a barker out there just going to town saying, we'll lower to this, we'll lower this, we'll lower this, sold, that sort of thing. It's just a process online. It's kind of a condensed eBay type process where you're going to comply with all the rules, and then you're going to submit your bids, and you're going to follow the rules to follow up with additional bids. And during the bidding period, you actually get to see what your rank is, and if you're currently the leader, and then you get to figure out whether or not you can afford or still make a profit if you lower your bids some more. And that can be done with one single piece of equipment or thousands of line items. It just takes a little pre-planning to get one of these done. Again, like I said, let me just say, this is, under the law, this is probably the quickest method when it comes to a bid. You can literally set one up in 15 days. If you have it prepared and ready to go, as soon as you place your first ad in the paper, the day it comes out in publication, you can activate online, and 15 days later, bidding would open in theory, and at that time, whatever the rules are established for that particular bid, whether bids will remain open for an hour or 2 hours or even just 30 minutes, the bidders submit their bids during that period of time. When the time runs out, the bids are closed. You get automatic bid tabulations and reports that describe, price by vendor, price by product, price by weight, price by categories of products. Any kind of report you want for these types of platforms can be produced for you. And then you make up your mind who has best complied with the rules and who has the most advantageous bid, typically the lowest bid. Yes, ma'am.
Can the other bidders see the pricing, and can the person that's soliciting the bid see what's happening?
It depends on how you set it up. Typically, you will just reveal what a bidder's rank is, okay? The fact that they are not ranked first in a particular category. And you do that so that somebody is really serious about bidding, and they're not going to just throw in, if they see a $100,000 bid, they'll say, well, I'll just end this, I'm going to throw out a $50,000 bid. You know, it shuts everything down. And at the end of the day, he may come back and say, or the vendor will come back and say, well, I can't meet that bid. So it's thrown everything for a loop. So typically, you're just going to let them know their rank, and they can keep lowering their bids until they see that they're in first place. You can set up rules that if somebody submits a bid in the last few minutes, it can be extended another 5 minutes or even 10 minutes for additional submission by other vendors.
Isn't this better for like a public works than what we do?
Actually, you can't use a reverse auction for public works, okay? That follows the public works bid process, which can be electronic, but it's a sealed bid process. Reverse auction is only for materials and supplies and equipment. And supplies includes food products, and janitorial.
So in other words, you're gonna have a lot of little items underneath.
Right, you have literally have thousands of items. Yes, sir.
Just a very quick question. A lot of these electronic purchasing formats, they charge a fee to the vendor to even participate. Is that allowed under the law?
Yes, the law is mostly silent as to the fee structures, and I'm going to get into the models of fee structures in just a little while. It's very important, and I'll give you what my opinion is when it comes to fee structures. So let's talk a little while about how do you go about choosing an electronic platform provider. Unfortunately, at the local level, and maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are no publicly owned, I'm talking about publicly provided platforms when it comes to electronic bidding. I know the state of Louisiana has one for their purposes, but at the local level, we're talking thousands and thousands of agencies, literally, all local governments and subdivisions, and there's probably not one except for the very largest that could really afford a system on their own. They could go out and get one licensed to them, work with IT people and technical personnel from the big companies such as Amazon and some of the other big online sellers actually have business applications that you can rent or buy for exorbitant licensing prices and try to adopt to your own use when it comes to bidding, electronic bidding and purchasing. But for the most part, we're dealing at the local level with privately owned platforms. We're talking companies that are established that provide this service, not only to government, but they also provide it a lot of times to, say, hospitals, other big industry users, but a lot of them specialize in local government, and some of them specialize in state government. So it's a matter of looking at them, figuring out what their requirements are, how do I contract with them or reach an agreement with them, what are the payments, how much is it going to cost. And there's no exception in the law when it comes to electronic bidding. It's there, it's required. So that forces us to search out and find these companies that can work with us. And I'll talk to you in a little while about one company that we're working with it's a relationship where they are coming in and they want to learn about Louisiana law and how to adopt their platforms to Title 38. And at the same time, we want to introduce those types of platforms to our members, especially our small members who are currently exempt but can opt into electronic bidding. But in the future, that exemption is not going to apply. We keep getting questions and pressure every year, when is the exemption? When are you all going to agree to drop that exemption? And it only makes sense. There's no point in a small entity, just because their population is under a certain size, to be exempt, because everybody knows that a city of 9,000 people can spend just as much as a state agency. They have millions of dollars worth of public works projects, sewer improvements, street improvements, vehicle purchases, everything under the sun. But I guess there's just an assumption that the level of sophistication, when your municipality is 10,000 or less, or your parish is under a certain size, that you should be exempt. But I don't think that's going to last forever. One thing about electronic platform providers is that you're going to find that most of them specialize in certain buying processes or certain product groups. So one thing to consider is, what are you looking to buy? And you might consider getting on with a platform provider who actually specializes or has done what you've done. Also, some specialize in large public works projects. I think there's if I'm not mistaken, Bid Express, somebody mentioned that earlier, that's their specialty, really, is public works highway projects. Others specialize in traditional sealed bids, while others specialize in both the sealed bids and the electronic reverse auctions. And of course, the question again is how do you choose one of these electronic providers? I guess you just have to shop around, or you may have been approached by some already, and they've discussed different payment structures and why they're best and why they should go with you. So we're going to continue with how to choose an electronic platform provider. Platforms vary greatly in their sophistication or the amount of consultation on the IT side that's provided by the platform provider. And of course, depending on what you want, a lot of times that increases your price or that lowers your price. Somebody else mentioned a model where you have to subscribe. Both the government agency has to pay a subscription charge, and the vendors that are registered into the system also have to pay a subscription charge. So you have a lot of money going into a system that it's a use it or lose it. In other words, I don't know how many solicitations I'll put out this year, but it's going to cost me $5,000 to sign up for the service, and it's going to cost each vendor in the system $400 this year to belong, to get notification. And then each side can get disillusioned because it's like, well, we only put out really 3 or 4 solicitations last year, and thousands of vendors are saying, I only got one opportunity or no opportunity to bid for my money because the agencies that are enrolled in this particular system aren't asking for what I sell. So that can certainly be a problem. So again, you have to consider what is your specific need in your specific program. What are you trying to purchase? When you're dealing with a simple platform, it's really designed to allow a buyer simply to upload their self-created solicitation in PDF form. Click and drag and put it in there, and boom, it's uploaded. Okay. On the other end, you're going to have potential sellers. They're going to go online and they're going to download and read what's going on in the solicitation. They're going to check the requirements. They're going to check to see if there's a bid form. They're going to print it out. They're going to fill in that bid form by hand. Okay? Then they're going to go back in and they're going to upload the bid form. And on the deadline date, the government agency involved is going to receive the results. And they can sit there and go down the line and print out vendor A's response, vendor B's response, vendor C's response. And that's how it works in its simplest form. As long as it's secure, as long as those bids are sealed, so on and so forth. It's really not that much different than receipt of paper bids. So a lot of people ask, well, why are we doing this? Why do we use this system? And sometimes it's like, well, it meets the requirement of the law, and really that's all we're trying to do is just meet the requirements of the law. But I submit to you that you really need to find a platform that's going to assist you, that's going to provide staff augmentation, IT support. If you need sourcing information about research about prices in the field, who the available vendors are, then you're going to want to get on with a platform with a little more sophistication.
Paul,
Yes.
am I understanding the state, Lamont or the state does not have a plan to provide any sort of platform, we're just gonna go find our own, is that what we're at here, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we have somebody with state purchasing here today who could probably speak more to that. But my understanding is that the Office of State Purchasing actually has an electronic sealed bid platform. And it's for their use. It complies with their Title 39 work. Now, I don't know if that's offered to local governments or anything like that.
The hack is, right now, my knowledge, since I'm working in both systems, I've used LaPack.
Right, now,
In
but
that system, you can only
Post.
post your bid.
That's it. It's a great system to get the word out. You advertise in the paper, but you can post your bids anywhere else somebody will allow you to post it. You know, whether it's a private entity or with the state that allows you to put it in their PAC system. But that's simply an advertisement type system that vendors can go to, take a look if there's something in their category, probably download the specifications if they're available in there, and to take a look at. But it has nothing to do with the submission of bids, especially at the local level. So it's not an electronic bid platform in and of itself.
What I was gonna say was, the state will allow Title 38 entities to use that. So I'm assuming probably that whatever if the state's gonna have, surely the state's gonna come up with a platform, because otherwise we're gonna pay a lot of money, and so are the vendors who are trying to do business with us, and we can go out there and hodgepodge all this together. Then the auditor's gonna have to come in and learn every system, how to audit it, how to get into it. That's gonna be a mess. If somebody don't take control of that, stop, and make nothing happen.
Sure. Well, it's working so far where it is working. You just have to get on the platform provider. Currently, I don't think, the state system is tied into their financial system. You know, that's one of the things, I believe it's an SAP system. That's a company out of Germany that produces that. And they have different modules. So it's really tied to state business, Title 39. It's not necessarily tied to local business under Title 38 at the local level. One thing though is groups. I mean, you can always get together, school districts, anybody, municipalities, and that's one thing that we're emphasizing is get together and set your own standard, find your own provider. Work through your different organizations or work through your professional associations and come up with a plan or a scheme that allows everybody to use the same platform, and that platform developer actually customizes and standardizes everything that your particular group or subgroup needs. That's called customization and standardization of solicitations and bid templates and response forms. Like I said, the more sophisticated platforms are really good. When you first get started with them, literally all you have to do is call them up or contact them, especially where you've never done anything before, and just submit your completed solicitation in paper form to them. And they will take it from there and get you started with electronic bidding. If you can find a provider who's willing to do that for you, has the proper staff and the consultants, that's a great way to get started. I mean, you're going to learn as you go, but in the beginning, they're going to carry you along until you're up to speed. We have other platforms that are simply do-it-yourself. You're going to have to put it out for a bid in and of itself. That's kind of funny. You got to put it out for an electronic platform to get a license. You have to put it out for a solicitation in paper form. But that's another possibility. Unless you're the largest of the large, you're not going to be able to afford it. State of Louisiana, through its various agencies at the Division of Administration, I think the last time I looked, it could be more now. They're paying $8 to $9 million per year to maintain their electronic financial system and modules that allow other things to occur in the system. So it's very, very expensive. You get involved with outfits like Oracle, SAP, and other big actors out there nationally. And the costs can really just eat you up. If you have to purchase several $1 million worth of products a year, it's just not really worth your time to go the licensing route. Some platforms are dual purpose. We've talked about this. They're both a hosting site, and they also allow the submission of sealed bids electronically. And A lot of those platforms have a database of qualified vendors in that field. It gets a little touchy though, because like I said before, vendors actually have to pay either per solicitation or a subscription before they can even see what the bid opportunity is completely. So there's a lot of complaints about that kind of system.
Mr. Holmes,
Yes.
I'm thinking that having it be so costly to the SFAs and them having to take all these steps, would that not restrict competition because the little guy then couldn't bid?
Well, and that's a distinct possibility. We work with PTAC, so does the state. We work with PTAC at the local level. We're always trying to find ways to allow the smaller vendors and contractors to compete. So the platforms that we work with, we try to keep all the costs down up front. It doesn't cost anybody a dime to either post a bid or to respond to a bid. You know, administrative fees come in later depending on whether there was a successful sell or not. And as far as small vendors are concerned, they tend to like that process because it gives them a leg up, allows them to come in and actually submit a bid and not have to pay anything unless they're actually awarded a bid. Then they don't mind paying a small administrative fee for being a successful vendor.
I think it is, we gotta keep in mind that when we all go out and select our own platform, the vendors are gonna have to pay 15 subscription fees.
That's right.
That don't make any sense.
No.
Well, it doesn't. And when you get locked into that kind of system, you feel a lot of pressure. Let's say you've been with one that works on the subscription fee basis. I've experienced this, and now you want to switch to something else, but you specialize in public works contracts. Well, as soon as you try to switch platforms, then all of these contractors that are invested in the old platform are going to start complaining. You know, we paid $500, $600, $1,000 a year, or $200 per bid, or $85 per bid, and now you're switching, and we're going to lose our investment in this platform. And you get a lot of blowback and things of that nature. Again, that's why I'm not big on the subscription models myself.
Can I say something? A lot of the ones that are not participating in online bidding now, a lot of Louisiana municipalities are contracted with Central Auction House, and it's called Central Bidding. If you look them up, you will see a whole bunch of different agencies that are already subscribing with them, and it might be in your best interest to talk to them and see what needs to be done. Because from what I understand, if they are a registered vendor with Central Bidding already, they're only paying that one subscription fee.
Right, they pay a yearly subscription.
Yeah, yearly
fee.
subscription fee, yes.
Smaller ones who, let's just say, though, I paid the subscription fee, and the next year, it's like, I'm not paying that subscription fee again. I didn't get any opportunities to bid at all, even though I got some notices of stuff, okay? So now, when they do see something, or they get it word of mouth that, hey, this is something that you could do, it's a $200,000 project. Now they've got to go back and pay a fee just to get to the bidding documents and everything like that, because they're not subscribed anymore, so they have to pay the fee. Another thing with it, it's not knocking on Central Auction.
No, I know.
Or anything like that, but some of those types of models, their fee goes up and it goes down depending on who you are, whether they're trying to get your business, and so on and so forth. I know like with Jefferson Parish, Jefferson Parish, I think maybe bid it out or entered into a contract with them.
The process through an RFP.
Right, and so you're paying probably well over $150,000, to access their platform. That's called a license fee, and I don't know how often it comes up or what the residual payments are. It could be $50,000, $60,000 a year. That may work for a big parish like Jefferson, but that's not going to work for a school district with, with 3,000 students, so on and so forth,
Right.
limited funds. It's just not a viable option.
Right, I was just giving choices, and she had mentioned BidSync, and that was another one that was competing against Central Auction House. And there was a couple of other ones too, but just to give y'all some kind of starting point, is what we did. And actually, Central Auction House is our second provider. We started out with a company called Cycom, and it was actually out of California. And that was a little bit of a nightmare because we tried to make it interact with our financial management system, and that did not work.
Yeah.
So basically what we have right now is considered an electronic envelope. You're sending it out there electronically, and they can respond electronically. But keep in mind, when you do get a platform, especially with public work projects, make sure they have what's called the outside of the envelope, where they still have to put their information, their license, the Louisiana contractor's license number, and everything of that for your bid opening. So keep all
Right,
that in mind.
it's a regular bid process. It's just done electronically. They still have to comply with licensing and verify their number. They still have to, figure out how they're gonna post bond or bid bond or whatever may be required in those types of situations.
Yes.
Yeah, so, anyway, like I was saying, there's not one size that fits all. Some of those models, like I said, work for bigger entities. They're not necessarily, with the smaller entities.
I have a question. Is there anything, I'm concerned about the small, bidders and small. Is there anything preventing you from making direct contact with them to make them aware that this bid is out there?
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's called sourcing. Some people call it strategic sourcing, because in addition to putting something in the paper and posting it online, you actually want to be able to reach out to vendors who may qualify to bid, especially if you're seeking a lot of competition. Some other entities say, I don't want you to do any sourcing. We've got our regular vendors and we're complying with the law. If those five get notice, we're good.
In bid sync, you can actually put in vendors that you want and then indicate who you want to send it to.
Sure,
So-
and there's plenty of them that work under
Yeah.
that particular model. You have others, though, that provide sourcing services, where they have a staff, and they actually, a staff of professionals, and they have market research, and they actually pick up the phone or get on emails and contact these vendors and let them know personally about the opportunity. Under the law, that's called known vendors or found vendors, and there's nothing stopping you from getting them interested in bidding on your project any way that you can. You can't give them any kind of advantage. You're merely telling them about the opportunity. You might even send them a copy or tell them where to log on to see the bid itself and tell them, I think that you'd be very interested in this. I'm going to skip down to, I'm calling the administrative fee model. This is the model that I personally most favor, and it'll become evident later. Why? But under an administrative fee model, which is out there, and there's several platforms that operate under these kind of models, it's neither the agency nor the vendor is charged to use the system up front. Meaning, there's no registration fees, there's no contract fees, there's no licensing fees, that sort of thing. Okay, it's in my briefcase. So it's almost like it's in the public realm. They get the agency gets to use it and post their solicitations. The vendors get to respond, and there's absolutely there's no fees to be paid. There's no subscription fees, licensing fees, or anything else like that. The fees actually are paid on the back end, typically by the vendor. Of course, an agency can agree to pay them too. At the end, and it's generally a small amount. We're usually talking about 1% on large purchases. Of course, a 1% fee based on the total bid, successful bid, would be capped. But what that does is allow an agency to not only, let's just say you're buying vehicles or buying equipment, the cost that you're paying for the equipment also includes the cost of the platform. You get a true cost of what your total purchase was. You're not having to administer separate contracts that have nothing to do with what you're purchasing. You don't have to worry about licensing, violating licenses, how many users, so on and so forth. That's the beautiful thing about platforms that are basically out there to use that work under the administrative fee model. And we're talking about some big companies, international companies that come into a state like Louisiana. And they'll team up with an outfit like the Louisiana Municipal Association and LAMATS. And what they will do is depend on us to educate our members about the services that are provided. But at the same time, we're teaching them how to adopt their platforms to Louisiana law and Louisiana requirements, and also individual agency and agency requirements. requirements. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and we help each other in that particular regard. These models are free, like I said, and they're called on-demand. Again, meaning that you're not locked into any contract. You can use them, then one day you may decide, well, we've decided we're not going to use their services anymore. We have another department, they're using Bid Express or Central Auction or somebody else, and we're just going to jump in on their contract and use one of those. Usually I find that doesn't happen because outfits that work on the administrative fee model are some of the most successful platform providers because, of course, if they don't do everything right, if you don't have a successful bid, then they earn zero. So they're motivated constantly to improve their technology, to improve their services, and everything else that goes with bids. Because if the bid falls apart for any reason, it's canceled. Somebody protests, it's tied up for a long time, then there's absolutely no fees paid. There's no fees paid until typically an award goes out and an organization is paid. An organization pays the vendor. And that's when the vendor becomes responsible for the administrative fee. Somebody was asking if you can mandate just electronic bidding. Title 38, 2212.1F says that public entities shall have the option to require that all bids be submitted electronically for any competitive bid without the public bid. And I like that provision. We have a few cities that have gone that route or going that route. They typically start off at first with both electronic bidding and then come and deliver them to City Hall, mail them in, use a courier, have them delivered. And once they find out the ease of electronic only, then they tend to switch over, especially depending on who their vendors are and what they're purchasing. Somebody mentioned, well, local contractors in construction or whatever like to come and hand it in personally. Well, that may be true. Other items that are big that really go out for sealed bids are, for instance, all kinds of police vehicle accessories that have to be installed into multiple vehicles, let's say 30 at a time, each vehicle to be equipped with about 10 or 11 different line items. So they find that it's way easier to put it out electronically and require the submission of electronic bids because the bid templates, even if they're in Excel form, automatically calculate what all the bids are all the way down the line. There's a lot less paperwork, a lot less calculating, and it's easier to do the bid tab and get to the final conclusion, go over to council, and get the final contract approved. And of course, if you use the online interactive bidding, that's what we call reverse auctions, then it's required that's electronic. And I'm going to get into that kind of bidding in a little while and explain how flexible it is for you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when you're talking about bidding electronically, are you only talking about formal bids, or are you also talking about quotes for small purchases, which a lot of people call those bids too?
Right, those are actually requests for quotes, RFQs, and that's typically where the product, that you buy in a year's time is typically under $30,000.
Yeah.
At the local level, I think it's $25,000 at the state level. But yeah, those are called small purchases, and there are electronic platforms available to put those out, which are very convenient. We sponsor one, and I can tell you about that later. I didn't come here prepared to talk about it in detail.
But I mean, so far as the regulation goes, was the regulation written for just the formal purchase
The laws
procedure?
are written for just formal. It falls under, it specifically falls under Public Works Law sealed bids.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So you're talking about the requirement when you come to sealed bids. You fulfill the requirement automatically if you use, again, what I was calling the reverse auction. That's the interactive bidding because it's under a whole separate statute.
Okay.
And that's one that's very flexible. The first words of the statute are basically throw out all the other provisions and you follow this statute alone when it comes to interactive online bidding. So then they go through a whole laundry list of all the rules that you can opt into for each particular solicitation. And of course, at the local level, that's controlled at the purchasing level. The purchasing officer for the city or the council or the mayor, makes the decisions as to the rules that are going to go into a particular reverse auction. And again, I have a list there. It's talking about the advantages of electronic bids only. I've been through a lot of them, but you can review them. I find, again, that it's a process. When you first start off, until you get comfortable, you're going to go with both. But eventually, after a few, you're going to find, and depending on your vendor base, you're going to find that it's easier just to go electronic. It's easier to go electronic when you're dealing with vendors who are not located directly in your locale. They may be regional vendors or somewhere in the state but far away. When you're dealing with equipment and things of that nature, where the distributors are scattered, then they're not going to want to show up and turn their bid in person. In the contracting field, you're going to find, public works that, a lot of them still want to turn a bid by paper. But I dare say just about any other vendor that tries, when you're just making a basic sell of a product or products or supplies, that once they go electronic, they don't want to go back. Now, they may not want to switch platforms, but they don't want to go back to going down to City Hall and turning in all the paperwork. Also, when you're going to choose a platform, you're going to look at the provider capabilities, And my suggestion is to choose a platform provider who can get your particular department up and going immediately. I mean, the requirement, if you're not doing it, the requirement is now. And you don't get around it by just saying, well, we're not up to speed yet. I've been working with a big Baton Rouge agency for a couple of years. I'm not going to say who it is. And they just keep putting it off. They've been putting it off now for 2-3 years since they've been told by the legislative auditor that they have to go electronic. They just don't understand the process. They're afraid of the process. They have a 3-person procurement staff. They worry about everything from, is it going to take our job away from us? No, it doesn't take your job away from you. It assists you, it helps you, and it works as staff augmentation, but you're not going to lose your job. I mean, you've got plenty of duties that you have to perform. They're afraid of, what's the training period? How do we get started? How do we schedule training? Who's going to come and train us? And it's like, look, you get started and the training is automatic. And again, it's a process. You start off by doing your solicitation the way you've always done it, and then you get with your platform provider and you say, here it is. They're going to help you develop the templates that are required in the electronic version, and they're going to get back with you and you're going to approve it. And when you publish your paper, you add in the paper, they're going to publish it online. And you're ready to go. So there's not a lot of preparation and study and so on and so forth. But as time goes by, you're going to have access to the interface, to the input functions of your program. You're going to have your own dashboard eventually. In most cases, you're going to be able to see your past solicitations. You're going to be able to download them again electronically and clean them up and put them back in there again, so on and so forth. But the interfaces are typically, once you learn how to use them, it's just pointing and clicking and dropping down fields and putting in dates and dropping and dragging standard language that you use in most of your solicitations, and then changing up the specifications. And then when you get a little more sophisticated and you're working with a platform provider for a while, they will actually build the electronic response templates, that automatically calculate and determine if all kinds of requirements have been met. So don't be afraid to get involved just because you've never done it before and you think it's going to take all of this time to get up and going. Find a provider that will hold your hand and get you going from the get-go and do it in a legal fashion and get you up and going. They're out there. There's outfits that provide, like I said before, that consulting and technical advice that will help you get started immediately. And I've worked with cities, smaller cities and towns. It's like, well, what do we do? And I show them where to go to the Lanat's website, what they call Lanat's Purchasing Services. You go to bids and reverse auctions, and the next page that pops up is basically how to submit your request, basically for your first bid attempt. And you fill in the blanks and you hit submit. It goes to the platform provider and they pick up the phone or email you immediately to get you started. Find out where are you, when's your deadlines, do you have your ad done up, so on and so forth. Okay, if you can get that to us, we're gonna get it uploaded into the system. You're gonna proof it and approve the final version. And the date that you go live, we go live, and it's taken care of at that point. And they help you with your ad, telling you that you need to insert this language in your ad so they know who the platform provider is, and where the links can be found, and how to access those links, and so on and so forth. So the process of transitioning, if you find the right platform provider who doesn't just throw it at you and you're on your own, is a good platform provider. That's what you should look for if you haven't gotten started yet. You also want a platform provider who eventually is going to be able to customize your bids for the types of purchases that you typically make. I mean, you might have a department or a unit of a particular agency, and maybe all they do is put out food bids or food services contracts. Well, if you get the right provider, platform provider, they can customize it. They can customize USDA rules right into your solicitations and in the responses, and then you're ready to go, just like clockwork. It doesn't matter whether you put out 1 per year or 50 per year. Once you have the basic templates there, and once you have the basic response forms in there, then basically you're ready to go. It's just basically, dusting them off and resubmitting them over again. And again, what I look for this administrative fee basis model. Again, that's no upfront cost, no long-term agreements. You have the flexibility to utilize the platform that meets your needs, and you don't feel pressured if some other department or regular purchasing unit where you work uses another platform. I mean, they're paying money for that platform, so you might feel pressure, well, we probably need to use it because, it's expensive, but really they don't know anything about food bids or what we do. Well, if you go with an administrative fee model, you don't have to worry about that because you're not paying anything up front, and neither are the vendors. So you can learn by trial and error, and even when you get it down, you're still not paying anything for the use of the platform other than an administrative fee that has to be worked into the overall bid when it's all said and done. So you're not expending any more budgeted funds if you're going with a separate platform that suits your particular department or unit better than, the general administrative purchasing office.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
We're always so concerned about cost, keeping our food costs down.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand how this is going to help us keep our food costs down.
Right.
Whenever we know there's no such thing as a free lunch,
Yep.
we do know that they will build in the cost for that fee, even though it's an administrative fee basis model. The vendor's going to build that cost in there, and we are going to pay it.
It's going to be built in.
Right, we're going to pay it, and
You are.
so I don't know how, that puts. We have so few vendors as it is that will bid on food,
Right.
and how this is going to put them in a, it's already tough. We only have 2. The disadvantage is who's going to put the least expensive administrative fee in there. You know what I'm saying? It's how,
Right.
I'm just trying to understand how this is going
Sure.
to help us to
It
get.
just depends on what route you go. If you have limited vendors and profit margins are small, you suspect, and you never know, then you go with a sealed bid process. And it's going to be based on an administrative fee. Typically the fee, let's just take example, recently the city of Crowley put out big line item sealed bid for all kinds of accessories for their police vehicles. It's about $105,000, $110,000 worth. The fee was 1%, capped out at $400. Okay, so the winner, receiving a $105,000 contract was responsible for a $400 fee. None of the other 5 bidders had to pay anything. The city really paid nothing. And if it was worked into that bid somewhere, guess what? The city, the size of Crowley, Louisiana, sure didn't do it. Anyway.
So we would do better to do like an all or nothing bid rather than individual items. Because right now we do individual items.
Well, the beautiful thing about all bids, and I'll admit that we can help, and platform providers can help you devise a strategy, but they rely on feedback from you. They don't know the market like you know the market in some ways. So who do we go with? Okay, we've got all these multiple dry good items. You know, do we go with the lowest overall vendor, or do we go with the vendor who can come up with the best price on certain categories of those dry goods? So that's something that you have to consider. But any kind of response can be divided, it can be weighted, it can be categorized. They can present it to you in several different ways, where you reserve your right to go with a single vendor, the lowest bid in certain categories, or, you know, we can mix and match as we choose, you know, in a reasonable fashion down the line. But generally, the results are going to be put out and itemized for you to show you what the results are. As long as you have the proper language in your solicitation, then you can choose what is most advantageous for you. Because if you're on a sealed bid, you can basically go with 3 alternatives. Okay, I know Louisiana law. So there's your 3 alternatives.
Thank you.
Business question. On the first slide, you said that the administrative fee model, the fee is paid for by the successful bidder, and it's usually a small percent. So is that how you're relating the sentence that's underlined, that the money allocated to purchase the food supplies pays for use of the platform?
Right, as Lady pointed out, you know, of course they're going to have to work, you know, what they expect to pay as an administrative fee back into the bid. Okay, so like I said, you want to keep it, you want to keep it as a small percentage, and you also want it capped. Meaning, if somebody puts out $1 million bid, you know, you don't want to pay them a $10,000 fee on it, and I don't think the platform provider would expect to get a $10,000 fee on that when they provided a platform and they provided a few services and some consultation and got you up and going. So a fee like that, you'd have to reach an agreement, you know, in advance with them that, you know, that it's capped. It's capped at a certain amount.
Would that not be
Yeah,
the
can
bid?
I comment on something? On your fees, no matter where and what you do, your fees are getting worked into whatever you're buying. Because if you're doing an item by item bid, and one vendor bids it and the other one doesn't, well, maybe that one that didn't is because it's gonna cost him too much to bring it in, and the other one's gonna do it because maybe figures he's gonna get more stuff in there and he can afford it, but you're still not getting the best price on it. It's the same thing in everything. All these fees are worked in for their drivers, their insurance, their workman's comp, etc. It's worked into your food cost. Okay? Same difference.
Yeah, now if you're working with a large bid, let's say you expect a bid to be $20 million, and at the end of the process, it's shown that, you know, that you saved $3 million from what you were paying before, because now it's competitive, and the products are competitive, and you've really got the competition and the price has gone down. Are you going to mind paying, you know, 1% on that sort of, in that sort of situation? Probably not. You know, when they're going to get you know, a $10,000, $20,000 fee based on the fact that you just saved $3 million, then, you know, at that size, that really sounds like peanuts. But all providers provide their policies and what they expect. And just remember this: before any bid goes out, okay, either your purchasing department or your board or whoever approves these things has to approve that fee. It's not just made up out of thin air. And they have to come in and, you know, explain why the fee is what the fee is.
I have a question.
Yes.
I am a non-public school with 500 students. This, to me, is going to impact us maybe far greater than it will larger. We are not, you know, our parishes, all the students get their meals for free. However, we do not. We still have paying reviews and free. So our reimbursement is lower per child, of course, than a public school would be in that situation. So I'm going to contact vendors and say, I want you to make a bid on 500 students for 9 months, and they're going to look at me, and am I going to be worth it?
Well, it depends on what amount we're talking about. What's the spend? It's worth it, you know, it's worth it to every contractor to make a profit, to sell the product that they sell. Nobody's going to turn you down.
Because I am small, what is it going to
strategies to put out less bids. You categorize purchases where you can. You set up a term contract over the course of the school year. You issue purchase orders when you're ready for delivery. You establish a contract that there's no required quantity that has to be purchased, and so on and so forth. And then it's going to cost you what what the low bid price is for the particular product and the delivery terms and conditions that you set up.
I've purchased items from the lowest bidder before. I got inferior products. I got bent cans, and all the things that went with it, so I was willing to pay a little more to get quality merchandise. And, I mean, is that like the?
Are you required to do electronic bidding?
I'm required in some company here.
Right, so I would suggest looking into the interactive bid process. That's reverse auction, but again, that's a misnomer. It's just interactive bidding, and it's flexible enough where you can basically pre-qualify who you're going to allow to bid. There's no, I don't know how you say it there. Under sealed bids, you can find that somebody's not responsible. You can find that that they've messed up in the past, and you can go through a process and exclude them. But
Where we live,
when you pre-qualify under interactive bidding, it's wide open. You can just qualify them for a number of reasons, because their standards of presenting canned goods, whatever you want to call it, is not up to your standards. So, show me that it's going to be up to the standards, or guarantee me that only 0.005% of all cans received are going to be dented or in bad condition or what have you.
well, there's only 2 vendors that actually come as far into the rural area as we are. I got to have more than one bid.
Sure. And there's always problems associated with any kind of bids, whether it's all paper or electronic.
If you would, hold your questions until the end, because we're giving him some extra time this morning, because y'all heard us a lot. So we're gonna give him a little extra time, but, and then Kathy said we're having a lot of background noise with people talking, and we're trying to record him so that we can put it up on the website, so in case you need to go back and hear his words again, that you'll be able to. So if you would just kind of keep quiet, let him get through his slides, and we have some time after that. We can
Sure.
take some
And at
more
the end,
questions.
all the materials will be made available to you, and I'll also be here if anybody needs to call me personally and ask questions about your exact situation. I'll be glad to talk to you and explain. All right. Again, we're continuing with platform provider capabilities that you should take a look at. You need to find a platform. If you're not doing it, you need to find a platform provider who will assist you in transitioning to electronic bidding almost effortlessly. And again, that involves somebody who's willing to work with you, at no additional charge, at no charge at all, to get you up and going and become familiar with the use of their platform. That takes away the worry of having to go to extensive training, so on and so forth, learning all kinds of processes before you can get started. You need to know that your platform provider has a staff that can assist you with those things from the get-go. It's not taking it out of your hands or anything like that, but they're basically holding your hand, assisting you, through the steps. And keep in mind, they don't have any stake in who wins a bid or anything else. They just have a stake in making sure that the electronic portion of the bid is smooth and it's successful. That bidders can bid, they can get their information uploaded, and that can be gotten in time. I'm describing when you get started, and again, that's not necessarily the time to train or try to develop electronic templates before you ever get started. You can spend years trying to prepare. That's not the way to go. Here's your initial attempts. You're going to prepare your solicitation and your necessary newspaper ad. I mean, everybody does that right now. And initially, that's all you have to do, period. Then you place your solicitation and your documentation in the hands of your platform provider. You say, here it is. It's going out in 2 weeks. We need to get this up on your platform. All right. Then the ad and the solicitation it's going to be revised to a certain extent because you haven't done it before, you don't know all the terminology, so the platform provider is actually going to help you revise and put the necessary online links, electronic links, whatever is required, and information where to get help, you know, if you have trouble with the bid and all of that. It's going to be worked into the solicitation and the instructions, okay? And then you're going to review it and you're going to approve it at that particular point. And you're going to see, well, my solicitation has not been changed. We're still, you know, we're in control. We're asking for what we want, and it's all in there. And then basically at that point, when the newspaper ad and the electronic, when the newspaper ad runs, the electronic publication will occur simultaneously. The ad's coming out Friday or Thursday, whatever day it may be, you know, and so okay, at 9 o'clock a.m. on Thursday, your solicitation is going to be activated on our platform. The newspaper ad tells them the link, where to go. When they go to the link, they can find it. If it's advertised anywhere else on any other posting platforms, it'll also provide that particular information. And again, you'll have some vendors wishing to submit electronically. You know, what they're going to do is, at this point, when you're first starting, you're basically going to, again, just download the solicitation, fill it in with responses manually, and then they're going to upload it back into the platform. That's typically how your very first venture goes, because your timelines are short. You don't have any experience with the platform provider, and they don't have any experience with you at that point. But as time goes by, things are going to get better, and things are going to get simpler. Initially, you're going to continue to accept your delivered paper bids, you know, that come into your office, and electronic bids. So, again, because your staff has demands, you don't have the time to train and to develop electronic platforms before using it. So you're going to allow that to occur initially. But in the following solicitations, it's going to become more customized and standardized. The electronic solicitation templates are going to be developed by the platform provider that will assist you. And at this point, electronic versions of your solicitations will actually begin driving the paper version. Meaning, you're going to log on, you're going to go to your dashboard, you're going to start a new solicitation, whatever the process is, even with the help of the platform provider. And the form that it looks online is basically going to become the paper version at that point. If somebody came down to City Hall, you just print it out and say, here you go, if you want to do that. Or you tell them, well, no, you go to this link, okay, to this site, and you can download the solicitation at no charge. And then you can fill it out by hand and bring it on into us. And of course, again, that's just a transition type process when you're going all in for electronic bidding. And again, as you continue to transition, all the bidders are going to begin accessing the solicitations and response forms through the electronic links that are provided. Then, at this stage of the transition, both the buyer and the seller are going to go entirely electronic. If you choose to go that route. Some things you purchase and some vendors you may never progress with. But that really would be the goal, is to go all in electronic and provide, make everything electronic. Adopt that provision that says, everything is going to be electronic. It makes your life a whole lot easier. And then instead of downloading, printing, and delivering the paper responses, the vendors are simply going to want to hit the submit button once they have all of their stuff uploaded and that they're ready to go. All right. This is just an example of some instructions. If they went online, a bidder, the first thing they're going to do is look at some instructions. They're going to look at a notice to bidders or an advertisement. They're going to get the basic details that tells them what to do and where to go. This is really one of the simplest forms here. They could be, some cities like to use 2 pages worth of notice. When you deal with the public works contract, they like their notice and advertisement to be 3 or 4 pages long. I don't know how a city can afford to get that published in paper, but that's what some of them do. But the basic instructions are just simply what you're looking to purchase in general terms, when the bids are going to be accepted, who the platform provider is, and so on and so forth. electronically, typically they're going to find what's called a tasks checklist. And this is to ensure, this is to actually ask the bidder, to ensure that the bidder is submitting and agreeing to everything that they need to agree to according to the terms and conditions of the solicitation. The platform provider will actually pull a lot of those requirements out and put them under a task list to be checked off down the line. You know, basically, have you downloaded all the documents that are required? Yes, I have. You know, check, you know, point and click. Have you looked at document number 2 of the bid form? Is it complete? Does your product meet or exceed the required specifications? Have you taken exception to anything? Have you given a reason why and presented an alternative product to it? And task 3, do you have a copy of your bid bond and your cashier's check attached? Okay, because if it turns out that you're if you're selected, or even if you're not selected, once you get it in, some require that the original be mailed or arrive at City Hall within a certain amount of time. Others simply require, if you're the chosen vendor, then you know you submit you submit these bonds immediately. Then you know you can have all the tasks you want down the line. You know, task 4, task 5. Some agencies want to attach a contract. If it's a simple purchase contract, they want to attach it in full form. And they want you to check off that should you be awarded, you agree to all of these terms and conditions, especially the non-negotiable ones. We want to know now, you know, or if you can't, then boom, you know, you're going to be ejected even if you're the low bidder. All right. This is actually our banner right here. LaMatte's has created LaMatte's Purchasing Service. Again, that's a wholly owned subsidiary of the Louisiana Municipal Association that serves the interests of local governments. Easy Buy is a national platform provider. They do both sealed bids and reverse auctions. That's what they specialize in. And they specialize in government, state and local. They also specialize in healthcare. They specialize in other national government solicitations, especially across the Caribbean region. And they also, again, they provide reverse auction services nationwide to many, many, many different large cities and counties around the country. And what Easy Buy will typically do is team up, let's say they want to move into Louisiana. Until they got involved with us, through the Municipal Association, they really had no business in Louisiana to speak of. They're big in Mississippi, but not really known in Louisiana. So we teamed up with them, both for them to learn our local government systems and procedures, and for our local governments to receive world-class services from one of the biggest providers around. And they work through an agency principle. They have, it's kind of like a franchise. They have a local agent that's in charge of Louisiana or in charge of Mississippi, and LaMatte's and the LMA will work closely with that agent to educate, to adopt processes that are efficient and that work electronically and ensure that they are complying with the cities that use the system are indeed complying with the law so that they don't have negative audit findings later on. I'll just give you and as a disclaimer, again, and for your information, I have a relationship with LaMatte's and with the Louisiana Municipal Association, and I am specifically hired as an independent purchasing consultant to work on their purchasing programs for them and to actually help them team up with various providers of various services. And again, their current partner when it comes to electronic platforms for sealed bids and interactive reverse auctions is Easy Buy. And again, Easy Buy and LPS, it's a cooperative partnership that provides commercial-grade multi-phase procurement processes for local governments that are adapted to local procurement codes and laws. And before this came to the government level, big corporations and big industrial suppliers and manufacturers have used these kind of systems for decades in various forms. And it just seems like in the last 10 years or 12 years, you started hearing about electronic bidding, interactive auctions, interactive bidding at the state and local level. So these types of company are a natural when it comes to, when it comes to the government services. And again, this kind of platform, an EasyBuy platform, it's not just a software solution. They provide front-end professional services and consulting that sets them apart. In other words, you want to put something out for an electronic bid, or are you just trying to comply with the dictates of the law, or do you hope to save money? Do you hope to identify additional vendors in this field? What are your goals? If you let us know, we can provide you or work with you on those strategies within the confines of Louisiana law that will get you there. They provide on-site bid assistance whenever it's needed. If you need them there while you open up the bid and the results start coming in, somebody to hold your hand to make sure there's no glitches or anything on your side. One of their representatives or myself will certainly be there to assist you. And again, EasyBuy works with some of the largest governments and agencies at the local level and also at the state level. And the LPS EasyBuy solution preserves the sealed bid and the security environment required in public procurement in full compliance with Louisiana law. As I mentioned initially, that's very, very important. I don't think our legislative auditor has looked into some of that, very closely in the past. I think that they're just, touching the surface and scratching the surface, making sure everybody's, saying that they're getting things out electronically and receiving bids electronically, but I don't think they've gone to the next step to kind of scratch below the surface. I think that'll be done eventually, so just let me know. Some of the services that EasyBuy provides, which also includes municipal association and LMAP. So they can help you with market research, strategic sourcing, which is simply sourcing of vendors, finding those vendors that will offer you the best deals or work into your strategy, for your supplies. Solicitation development, which is simply the creation of solicitation documents. They can be customized or standardized with your help if they know what you're looking for. And all these services are at no cost to you, by the way, with this type of platform provider. Bid tabulation reporting can be automatic. It's all done electronically, through calculations and so on and so forth, and the types of reports that you want. And I'll actually sit down and show you how to print out the various reports that you're looking for, or also combine those reports in a form that you're looking for. Those are your bid tabs. And they provide post-bid support and implementation by providing contracting and implementation services. They're also a recordation company, meaning you're registered, you're in the system, you're a buyer. Every solicitation you were ever involved in or worked on will be stored electronically in the system so that you can pull it back up and you can pull it up again, you can look at it, you can use it for audit purposes, you can find old solicitations or how things were done or what the pricing was the year before or 2 years before, and you can pull that data right out of the system and use it any way that you see fit. And these systems are also good when it comes to public records. They have what's called a buyer's portals, and it's not just EasyBuy, others have it too, where even if you receive some of the bids in paper, you can submit them all into the platform, and they get worked in with the electronic bids and calculated in the same form so that all the results are consistent. So you don't spend hours and hours with self-calculated results and the ones that you have to go in and calculate yourself, figure it out and then start trying to put them all on one spreadsheet to compare them. If that information is submitted through a platform provider such as EasyBuy, that process actually gets done for you. So again, it becomes an automatic report generator, an audit tool, and also a recordation system. Right. This is a flow chart just showing you basically how implementation works when it comes to a platform, not just EasyBuy, but other platforms that are on the sophisticated side. They're sophisticated on the programming side. They're not necessarily sophisticated when it comes to getting up to speed on them. And that's what I've encountered more with anybody else. What's it going to take for us to get up and going? We're scared, we're worried, we keep putting this off. But this kind of flow chart shows you and explains to you what goes on here. just simply starts off, you've got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It doesn't matter if it's a sealed bid or if it's an interactive auction. The basic processes are the same. You know, the buyer, that's the agency, chooses, are we going to go sealed bid or are we going to go with a reverse auction? Okay. The next step is simply you log into your account and you approve the, well, it says approve, you approve the solicitation. That means it's up in the system, either you created it or the platform provider helped you create it, and it's there, and it's waiting for your approval to say approved. When it comes to sourcing, this mentions Easy Buy, but it could be anybody that does this kind of service. Easy Buy will contact the vendors with the opportunity. You say, here's 5 known vendors that we've worked with before, we want all of them to have notice. Well, Easy Buy sends out notice. They're in the system, permanently. Then after that, well, and we'd also like to identify some new vendors perhaps. How far do you want to go? Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, regionally within Louisiana? Whatever the decision is, they're going to find those vendors and they will spend effort trying to get them into the system and interested in your particular solicitation, if that's what you want. Then in phase 2, you're going to, well, I repeated myself there. Phase 2 is actually the bid event. Scratch that box at the top. Go down to phase 2, auction event. Of course, it could be the sealed bid event or whatever it might be. They can provide management on site. They're there for the opening of the bids. That's what's going to happen. You know, the situation can be monitored from their operations center. If you encounter a problem, have a problem downloading, you call or you email, and somebody on the other end is going to fix the problem. Get that out so that you can go to your public reading on that. So you're not left alone to try to figure out things on your own. I encountered a city not too long ago that was using a different service, and that was one of the problems. They said there was some kind of technical glitch. We didn't think there were any results, and we already read the results, and the contractor thinks he's won, and they've all gone home, and then now we've gotten some results in from the provider. What do we do? I said, well, call your city attorney. Maybe you can figure it out. But the truth of the matter is, if it's in the system, it's audited, it's recorded. If they got them in on time, as entered into the system, then they're on time. It's just the same as losing them in the supply closet or in some other office and misplacing them temporarily. If you find them and they're postmarked correctly and everything and delivered on time, then you just have to call the vendors back in and say, look, you know, we made a mistake. There was additional bids that have to be considered. And then, of course, the phase 3 is always the post-event. You know, what happens afterwards, the bid tabulations. That's all up to the city. You know, they get the results. They have to, it's entirely up to the agency to analyze the bids and to select the winner and enter into the contract with them and so on and so forth. Touching on another basis, this is not a buying system. When it's all said and done, you still have to issue a purchase order just like you always do in your financial system or by hand or however you operate. So there's no danger of mistakenly buying anything through a system like this because it's not a financial system. It's not tied into a bank account. It's not tied into any other type of information involved with your agency other than current and past solicitations. That's it. Only the things that are entered into the system are in the system, although they can all be downloaded and exported to another system. What we have here, we were talking about electronic templates. You know, you might have a bid, field bid, or some kind of other interactive bidding, and the bidder online is going to log on, and he's going to see something similar to this, where they fill in their initial numbers, and then they have the opportunity when they bid, they can go up or go down. Increments can be pre-programmed into a system like this. If it's interactive, if not, then it's static. They just once they put in their prices, it's done. It's one and done, that sort of thing. But you know, after you're up and going, all of your templates are in this type of form. The only thing that changes are the descriptions on one side, you know, for each particular bid. So you have all your formatting, you know, after several attempts already built into the system that you can just pull up and again, I say dust them off and put in the new items that you need. From a buyer's view, this would be if I'm the agency and a reverse auction was being conducted. Of course, this is going on in real time. But this is a static shot of what's occurring. This is a Gary bid from the state of Connecticut. And blue circles represent one company. Yellow circles represent the other company. And as time goes by, you can see, as represented by the circles, that the bids are getting lower and lower. Of course, the one that started off with the low bid, their bids are pretty even all the way across. The yellow started off higher, so theirs has come down until at the very end, you can see the separation in price is only about probably less than $100,000. You can see over on the side, it's about $70,000 difference when it's all said and done. And that can be, you have a baseline price that you expect or the going price. This kind of baseline will tell you whether your prices are going down or whether your prices are going up. If it's in black, then you've saved money. If it's in red, that means that prices have gone up. But if it's competitive and all the prices near the end are close to one another, that indicates that you're really getting true market prices for your products. I don't know if any of you have experienced it. You know, just talking to the public, they seem to have this perception, and some contractors too. It's like, yeah, there were only 2 bids, and you know, I made a load. You know, I'm going to retire because you know, according to their rules under sealed bids, you know, they got to get this, and they can't reject it. I followed all the terms and conditions and so on and so forth. And even though they're paying $30,000-$40,000 too much, it's still within their budget. You know, I could have gone a lot lower. I don't know. That's the perception. I don't know if anybody's actually experienced that. But with this kind of bidding process, you can almost guarantee that you are getting the market market price on your products. All right. Here's a couple of case studies, and this applies across the board when we're dealing with interactive auctions. You know, state of Connecticut, they recently saved 10%, $275,000 saved on their dairy products contract. Food Service Management in Pennsylvania, they saved $425,000 off of their $3.8 million bid with 3 vendors participating. Bread, pastries, and poultry, this was in Cook County, wherever that is, $133,000 saved on $133,000 saved on a spend of $490,000. That's significant. That's 27%. And food term bid, Hines County, Mississippi, $102,000 saved on a $101.1 million bid with 5 participating vendors. It's just an illustration of the types of savings you can encounter with live, interactive type bidding. All right. Here's some contact information. You can get this later if you need to ask follow-up questions. If you need any kind of consultation whatsoever. When I do consulting, I'm not a salesman or anything like that. I'm charged by the municipal association to inform people what the law is and help them develop strategies, the best strategies that fit their need. I'm not pushing any particular product or anything like that. So if you ever need some help in-house or at your facilities, or if you ever need to come to our office in Baton Rouge, I'll be glad to sit down and talk to you about purchasing. Okay? Thank you. Okay. I'm being told I had a code that if you put your camera on it, it would download the information presented here automatically, but we can't get it to work right now. So I'm being told that this information here will be posted to what site?
To our Louisiana Fit Kids website.
It'll be posted later, and you'll be able to go there and download this PowerPoint presentation. Okay. I thank everybody. I'll be around for a while. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them up. Also have a card if anybody needs a card for follow-up. everybody wants to know, who wants to know
Is
this?
this something that we need to jump on? I mean, like, is this something in place for next year? Do you know where the,
Yes.
Nick, I mean, you got to have it in place by next school year? Well,
I don't know what the mandate is from the legislative auditor, but electronic, the requirement for electronic bids has been in place for several years. And it's, I mean, from the day that it took effect, it's mandatory. It's technically mandatory now. But I explained a strategy if you need to get up and going, you know, how to do that immediately, starting with, if you have a solicitation going out next week, you can start with the provider and get it up electronically at that point. Even if you don't have a contract with anybody. I mean, like I said, the system I described is at no risk, and there's no obligation to continue using it.
I don't agree that it's just not finding out, we have to have this in place, which we need to do. I mean, I've already, fortunately, I've started looking at something, co-op.
I think it's the auditors that are, that's what we have heard from it, you know, as far as they're starting to look into this, see if you're just doing it. You know, right, but it's been around for a while.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that I didn't understand that first of all, at one time when it first came out, we were quote unquote, we had a waiver, we didn't have to.
Yes.
Then oh yeah,
If you didn't have that.
that was years, that's when it first
Way
came out.
back, when it first came out, it wasn't.
Then I heard we needed to be doing it with our first review, which was what, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
And so we started posting all our bids on BidSync,
Right.
you know, and mailing them out. But that's one reason why I came here this morning was to see if we had to be doing electronically online, meaning having documents that they keyed in online. And if that's the case, then no. Well, see, what I have is a document they can download and they can
What
send
you
it
have
back.
now is an electronic envelope. You put your documents on there,
Right.
they can download them, fill them out, upload them.
If that's
You're
what
in
you.
compliance.
Okay, that's what I.
What you're talking about, when he was going into more information, was they do have some out there that are actually, where you go in and they key it in. But a lot of those, like we tried doing that with our first procurement system, and we had interface issues.
Yeah.
With the one that we had in Cycom. So we ended up going with central bidding with the electronic envelope. But BidSync is that. As long as you put it out there, they have the ability to download it, filling it out and uploading it back, you're in compliance.
What I've looked at, I went to the state of Mississippi and looked at what the state of Mississippi is doing, and that's what I'm looking at. And with their software, but we're gonna look at other things too.
But again, like I said before.
But that's entered in, and then we would possibly have to feed in our software, but as long as I don't have to record anything, and it's done, I mean, it keys it in and it evaluates, it does everything.
Okay, we're gonna, we thank Mr. Holmes for coming, he was very informative, and we've already asked him to come back.